Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Daytona Office Hours, where, as always, we'll take a look at a couple of past couple of releases, what's coming up, take a look at the roadmap, maybe some of these surrounding Daytona, and, of course, an open floor for questions. So, as always, let me start by sharing my screen. This out of the way. And let me zoom in a bit. Yeah, should be fine. Okay, so the last release we covered last week was, I think, 0.34.0, and now we have 35.0, which is a bit of a bigger release with a number of fixes and features. So to start, the features that we had was add Daytona restart workspace command by Tarun. So now you don't have to run Daytona stop and start. You can just do Daytona restart, which basically does the same thing. Then we have auto install remote SSH extension in VS Code, again by Tarun. So just a small UX improvement for users that use Daytona with VS Code but don't have the SSH remote extension installed. Now we just auto install it every time, and you don't have to worry about it. Then we have add spinner when tailscale takes longer than usual. I just noticed. Oh, it's fine actually. So the tailscale connection that gets started when you create a workspace, if it takes a bit longer, we just display a spinner in the terminal to let you know that something's going on and that it's not basically broken. So then we have port forward in workspace mode is public by default. So this was actually bigger change than it might seem. It was basically removing local forwarding when doing Daytona forward in workspace mode, which was basically irrelevant at that point, because you are inside the project. You don't have to forward the local host to local host. So we simply made the public forward public, and now when you do Daytona forward inside a project, it automatically forwards the port to our reverse proxy publicly, so you can share it quickly with anyone. And this also fixes an issue where sometimes the port forward would actually fail inside the project itself. Then we have the spinner during repo URL validation. So I can actually demonstrate this really quickly. So when you do Daytona create, let's actually change it there first. So when you do Daytona create, and then you do blank project, and let's enter a custom repo. So when you do, I don't know, github.com, Daytona.io, Daytona, we have the spinner now that's validating, because the actual validation takes a while because we need to fetch the context of the repo from our server. So it's just so you don't have the sense of lag when you input the actual repo. Then we have always mark project there as safe in Git. So before, when you create a project and the Git repo gets cloned inside, when you actually enter the project, you would, most of the time, not always, most of the time, you'd have to mark the Git directory as safe. And this was a bit annoying that you have to do it every time. So we simply made it the default where we basically always mark the project directory as default, because, I mean, you created it, so it makes sense that it's basically safe to run Git operations inside. Then we have fix broken code of conduct link. Nothing special, just a fix inside our repository documents. Then we have verbose list inconsistency by me. So this was actually an issue where sometimes when you did Daytona LSV maybe a few times in a row, it would actually return inconsistent results. This is just a simple fix for that. Then we have a fix for Bitbucket server context parsing, just a small improvement there. Then Bitbucket repo list missing entries. This was because I think hard-coded the page that we fetched from the Bitbucket server API, Bitbucket org API, and now we fix that. Then Bitbucket PR list option arguments. As you can see, a couple of Bitbucket fixes happened in this release, and now it should be more stable and definitely more usable. Then we have update to Headscale to 0.2030 and FRP to 0.60. So these two libraries are used for our VPN and for our reverse proxy. This is just a simple bump, and also it's a fix because it fixes some stability issues, and also there were some breaking changes we had to address as well. Then we have config client ID getting by me. So this is just something related to telemetry. Actually, this fixes the client ID that gets sent to our telemetry backend. So now you can actually override the client ID with Daytona client ID. That's all there is to it. Then we have Azure DevOps add invalid input panic. So before, when you inputted an invalid repo when using Azure DevOps, the actual server would panic completely. It would get recovered, but it would panic nonetheless. So this is just a simple fix for that. Then we have output error when purging auto completion data. So if we are unable to purge the auto completion of Daytona from your shell file, we basically just input the error and direct you to do it yourself. For it can fail for any reason. This is just a convenience when purging. Then we have server panic on invalid repo URL. Again, the server would panic when an invalid repo would get input in the field I showed before. That's now validating. Nothing special there. Then a fix for dev container compose creation. So we noticed that when you actually create a dev container from compose, it would get started twice, which was wrong. And the fix was the issue happened because of a regression, actually, where we generated the compose project name twice to the different value, and now it's the same value. So when it gets booted up twice, but since the name of the compose project is the same, it gets reused. So it's now correct. The behavior is now completely correct. Then we have two telemetry changes. So now we track command errors, and also we track used flag names. And again, the flags that we track are not flag values, so we don't leak anything related to your personal information or anything special that you use. We only track the flag names that we detect when using Daytona commands. Lastly, we have the breaking changes section. So we removed the public flag from Daytona forward while inside the workspace that was related to making it a default. So now the flag doesn't even exist anymore. Then we have the provider updates. So because we fixed the Docker Compose stuff, all the providers need to be updated. And the simplest way to do that is Daytona provider update --all. That's it from 3.5.0. Oh, of course, we had a new contributor in that release, and that was I am Atinat, I guess, which of course we always welcome. We love seeing new contributors interested in Daytona itself. Okay, then we have a bit of a smaller release that happened yesterday, which was only a patch release because we only fixed some stuff. So the fixes were regarding the version flag for run E. Let me check if I even updated Daytona version. Okay, yeah, I updated. So before we made a regression in the last release, where when you did Daytona -- version, it would actually panic. So this was just a fix for that. And then we have correctly checked for server running an install script and stop server as user on installed by me and Ivan. So these changes are related to our installation script that is used to install Daytona. Let me just find it. It should be curl sf. Yeah. So this here, when you install Daytona, we now correctly check if the server is running and correctly stop it, because before it was there was a problem with stopping the running Daytona instance, and now that should work fine. Then we have properly check if diff provider can handle repo by me. So before, we noticed an interesting issue where if, for example, you first added a GitLab provider, then a GitHub provider, and you have a repo of the same name in GitHub and GitLab, which was the case for one of our repos. And then when you actually create a GitHub project from that with the repo of the same name, it would actually go to the GitLab project, because the GitLab API would return that it can handle the actual repo. So now we fixed it by actually first checking the source of the repo itself. So the GitLab Git provider can only handle projects, repositories that come from GitLab.com or any GitLab self-managed instance, and the same with GitHub, Bitbucket, and so on. So the check is now proper, and we always end up using the Git provider that is for the exact source you're trying to create a project from. Then we have inconsistency with non-follow log reading by me. So we noticed, actually, one of our external contributors noticed that when you do, for example, Daytona server logs. When you do it in non-follow mode, it wouldn't always return the exact same result. And now this PR actually fixes it, so it's the same output when you do -f and without -f. And that applies also not only to server logs, but to build logs as well. And it will also apply to Daytona logs, which is PR hopefully coming in the next release. Then we have entry not visible in initial screen. So before Daytona, I think these two lines were getting cut off in some situations. So this just fixes that. And then we have fix prevent purge if server is active. So when you do Daytona purge, it will first ask you to stop the server, but if you don't stop it and still continue, it will now throw an error. Just a UX improvement if you try to disregard our message to stop the server. And also a small refactor where we have the health check route to the API client. This is just a small, let's say, DX improvement for developers. Now our API client also has a health check method inside, so you can so it makes it easier to check the health of the Daytona server. And one breaking change, which was caused by 1182, which is this. Now we remove the continue uncompleted flag from build logs command because the logs are now read correctly, and this flag becomes obsolete because this flag was actually introduced because of this inconsistency, which we didn't notice before. So now it should all be fine. That's it from these two releases. If anyone has any questions, of course, stop me at any point and we can talk about it. If not, we can check out what's come in the next release. So if we draft a new one, it should be 36.0. Let's see what's going on. So just a small refactor currently merged, but we, as always, will merge more stuff as we get to the deadline, because we like to stay on our toes. So then let's see a couple of PRs that might get merged. As I said, hopefully this gets released on Friday. This will become the Daytona logs command. So you will be able to do Daytona logs and then a workspace name or project name, and then you can get the appropriate logs. This is just a UX improvement, I think a welcome improvement, so you can get the logs on demand. And before, or currently, you can only get the logs on the create screen. Once you clear that, you don't even have access to the logs through the Daytona CLI. Then we have commit signing using SH and GPG. I think I did a couple of reviews here, and this should be ready by Friday, I hope. This will allow you to actually sign commits inside projects using your SH or GPG keys. This is very interesting for developers whose organizations actually require signing of, let's say, signing commits with SH or GPG keys. And this will work by you adding the appropriate key when adding a Git provider, and that key will then be used in all projects to sign your commits. And hopefully it will work out of the box for all the Git providers. And lastly, we have DTN alias for bash. This is just a DX improvement, nothing special there. And add tsnet directory for proper purge. This will solve an issue where the tsnet directory wouldn't get purged because it was outside the Daytona config directory. So it should be an improvement for that. If that's all, if anyone has any questions, I'll be free to take them, or we can do it after I stop the recording, or via Slack, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you can find us. That's all, and hopefully I can see you in the next office hours next week.